I thought my son simply wanted to help me organize my finances. That changed the moment I stared at a Chapter 7 bankruptcy file bearing my name, signed with a hand that was not mine. The terrifying part was not the threat of losing my home, but realizing only one person knew where I kept my documents. I did not scream in that courtroom. I just smiled, because I had already set the trap he never saw coming. My name is Lorraine Whitaker. I am 57 years old, a widow living in the quiet suburbs of Cedar Ridge. To most of my neighbors, I am just the woman who weeds her garden at 6 in the morning and pays her bills the day they arrive. They do not know that for 20 years. I worked as a risk manager for Harbor Crest Compliance Services. My job was to look at a stack of perfectly boring papers and find the one single lie that could bring a company down. I retired from the heavy lifting a few years ago, but the instincts never leave you. When my husband, David, passed away 5 years ago, he left behind a hole in my heart and $40,000 in medical debt. I paid off every cent. Since then, I developed a system that some might call obsessive. I call it survival. I track every penny in a ledger. I keep paper receipts. I have a fireproof box bolted to the floor of my bedroom closet containing copies of my deed, my will, and my tax returns. I trust paper because digital files can be deleted, but a physical document has to be burned. The unease started on a Tuesday afternoon. My son, Ethan, called me during his work hours, which he never does. His voice had a sugary, vibrating quality that usually meant he was trying to sell me on an idea I had already rejected. "Mum, I was thinking," Ethan said. "I have this friend, a really great lawyer who specializes in debt restructuring. I think he could really help you relieve some pressure." I frowned at the phone. "Ethan, what pressure?" "My credit score is 800. I have a small mortgage and the utility bills. I am fine." "You say that, but—" He trailed off, the silence heavy with implied judgment. "Mom, you are getting older. It is complicated. You just do not see the big picture like we do, that we was doing a lot of heavy lifting." It included his wife, Callie. She is 30 years old, beautiful in a sharp, manicured way, and speaks exclusively in therapy buzzwords while looking at my furniture like she is pricing it for an estate sale. 2 days later, they came over for dinner. I made pot roast. Callie picked at the carrots and looked around my dining room. The house is a 4-bedroom colonial that David and I bought 30 years ago. It is too big for one person, perhaps, but it is mine. The market in Cedar Ridge is exploding right now, Callie said, wiping her mouth with a napkin. It is fascinating. Mom, have you given any thought to, well, optimizing your assets? Holding on to this much equity without leveraging it feels like a trauma response. I set my fork down. It is not a trauma response. Callie, it is called living in my home. Ethan chimed in immediately, his voice a perfect echo of hers. "See, this is what we mean. You are so defensive. Mum, you are being stubborn about things you do not understand. You need someone to manage this for you. We just want to help." I looked at my son. He is 33 years old, yet he looked at his wife for approval before he even finished his sentence. I felt a cold prickle on the back of my neck. They were not worried about my finances. They were worried about their inheritance. I brushed it off. I told them I was fine and sent them home with leftovers they would likely throw away. I thought that was the end of it. I thought I had drawn a boundary. Then came this morning. The mail carrier arrived at 11 o'clock. Buried between a catalogue and a water bill was a thick envelope from the United States Bankruptcy Court. My hands did not shake as I opened it. That is the training. Panic is for later. Assessment is for now. I pulled out the document. It was a notice for a meeting of creditors pursuant to Chapter 7 of the Bankruptcy Code. The debtor listed was Lorraine Whitaker. The assets listed were 0. The filing date was 3 days ago. I scanned down to the bottom of the page. The attorney of record was a man named Grant Dorsey. I had never met a Grant Dorsey in my life. I had never stepped foot in his office. I had certainly never asked to declare bankruptcy. I stood in my foyer, the sunlight streaming through the dust motes, and felt the floor tilt beneath me. They had not just ignored my boundary, they had forged my consent. I laid the papers on my dining table, smoothing the creases with a cold hand. The signature at the bottom read, Lorraine Whitaker. To a stranger, it looked authentic. It had the same slant, the same loop on the capital L. But I have signed my name thousands of times. I know the muscle memory of my own hand. When I cross my T, the line always tilts slightly upward, a habit from grade school. This line was perfectly flat. It was a forgery, accurate to about 80%. But that missing 20% was the difference between my consent and a crime. I picked up the phone and dialed the number for Klein and Dorsey Legal Group printed on the header. Klein and Dorsey. How may I direct your call? The receptionist chirped. This is Lorraine Whitaker. I received a notice. Oh. Hello, Ms. Whitaker. Just one moment. I will put you through to Mr. Dorsey. He was expecting you might call if you got the mail today. She spoke as if we were old friends, as if we had done this dance for weeks. Grant Dorsey's voice was smooth, like expensive scotch poured over ice. Ms. Whitaker, good to hear from you. I assume you received the filing confirmation? I received a notice of bankruptcy that I never filed, I said, keeping my voice steady. I want to know who authorized this. Come now. Ms. Whitaker. Dorsey chuckled, a condescending sound that made my skin crawl. We went over this. Your son, Ethan, provided the signed power of attorney last week. He explained that the stress of the medical bills was getting to be too much for you. We are just executing the plan you agreed to via your proxy. It is the best way to wipe the slate clean. Power of attorney? The room seemed to drop 10 degrees. I never signed a power of attorney. I said, I have the document right here, notarized and filed. Dorsey replied, his tone hardening just a fraction. Perhaps you should speak with your son before you make accusations. Memory can be a tricky thing during stressful times. An hour later, the sound of a car door slamming drew me to the window. Ethan was walking up my driveway, holding a brown paper bag from my favorite deli. Callie was a step behind him. Ethan looked pale. He offered a tight, plastic smile as he entered my kitchen. Mum, I brought pastrami sandwiches. I thought we could, just hang out. I spoke to a man named Grant Dorsey, I said, ignoring the food. Ethan flinched. He set the bag down on the counter a little too hard. Mum, listen, I am just trying to help. You are drowning in paperwork, and you do not even realize it. I took the initiative. Do not make this into a big thing. Callie sat on the stool behind him, placing a hand on his shoulder. It looked like support, but her fingers dug into his jacket. She looked at me with wide, pitying eyes. Lorraine, she said softly. Stress can do terrible things to the mind. We have noticed you have been forgetful lately, mixing up dates, misplacing keys. Are you sure you do not remember signing those papers last Sunday? We sat right here at this table. My blood ran cold. She was not just lying, she was rewriting reality. She was planting the seeds of dementia to discredit me. I remember Sunday perfectly, I said. We ate pot roast. We discussed the weather. We did not discuss bankruptcy. See, Callie whispered to Ethan, loud enough for me to hear. She is blocking it out. They left after 20 minutes of circular arguments. As soon as their tail lights vanished, I logged into my bank accounts. I usually check them on the first of the month, but today I dug deeper. I found them. 2 small pending transactions on my savings account, one for 3 cents, one for 7 cents. These were micro deposits used to verify a link to an external account. And there, in the profile settings, my mailing address had been updated 3 days ago. It was no longer my home address. It was a post office box in downtown Cedar Ridge. They were diverting my statements so I would not see the transfers they were planning to make. I needed to know how far this went. I drove to Ethan's house. I still had a key, though I rarely used it. Their car was not in the driveway. They must have stopped at the grocery store on the way home. I told myself I was going there to leave a note, to try one last time to reason with my son before I called the authorities. I let myself in. The house was messy, cluttered with unopened mail. In the kitchen, the recycling bin was overflowing. I saw a yellow legal pad sticking out, stained with coffee grounds. I recognized Ethan's handwriting immediately. I pulled it out. It was a draft, a list of assets titled Mother's Inventory. It listed everything, even the vintage silver set I kept hidden in the attic. But it was the note at the bottom, circled in red ink, that made my knees give out. Goal bankruptcy leads to foreclosure. Buy back house via third party. Rent to mom. Or nursing home. I stared at the paper. They were not trying to save my finances. They were trying to steal my home, buy it back for pennies on the dollar, and evict me from my own life. I decided not to scream. I decided not to drive back to Ethan's house and tear that yellow legal pad into confetti. Instead, I went home, made a cup of tea, and picked up the phone. When I dialed my son's number, I let my hand shake just enough so that the tremor would travel down the line into my voice. "Ethan," I said, pausing to let a heavy, confused breath rattle in the receiver. "I have been looking at these papers again, and, well, maybe Callie is right. Maybe I did sign them and just forgot. I have been feeling so tired lately." The relief in his voice was immediate and sickening. "Oh, Mom. Thank God. I knew you would see sense. We just want to take care of you. I know," I whispered. I will let you handle it. Just tell me where to go. That is the spirit. Just rest. We have got this." I hung up. The moment the connection broke, my posture straightened. They thought they had a confused, compliant old woman. What they actually had was a retired risk manager with nothing but time and a very specific set of skills. Being underestimated is not a weakness. It is the greatest tactical advantage one can possess. I opened a fresh notebook. This was my incident log. I wrote down the date and time of the call, exactly what I said, and exactly what Ethan replied. I logged the unauthorized address change. I took photos of every envelope, every scrap of paper, and backed them up to a cloud drive they did not know existed. My first stop was the bank. I sat across from the branch manager, a woman I had known for 15 years. She looked troubled as she turned her monitor toward me. The request to change your mailing address came via email 4 days ago. Lorraine. From the address, Whitaker. Backup. Email. Com. I stared at the screen. I had not used that email address in a decade. It was the recovery email I had set up on Ethan's computer when he was in college. He had the password. He had logged in, impersonated me, and diverted my mail to hide his tracks. On my way home, I stopped at the print shop on Main Street, where Ethan gets his marketing flyers done. I showed the young man at the counter a photo of my son. "Oh yeah, Mr. Whitaker," the clerk said, nodding. "He was in here last week. Had a weird request. He wanted to know if we could scan a signature from an old document and print it onto a clean transparency. He said his mom had a stroke and needed a template to practice writing her name again." Real sad story. I felt a cold fire in my chest. A stroke. He was telling strangers I was incapacitated to justify his forgery. I sat in my car and called Denise Calder. Denise spent 30 years as a court clerk. She knows more about how the system is abused than most judges. "Lorraine, listen to me very carefully," Denise said, her voice dropping to a low, serious register. "This is textbook. It is called Elder Financial Exploitation. They are not just stealing from you. They are building a medical narrative. If you walk into court screaming about theft, the lawyer will point to your outburst as proof of dementia. They are setting the stage to have you declared incompetent, so the bankruptcy looks like a mercy. I need a team." "Denise," I said. By the next afternoon, I had emptied my emergency savings cash I kept in the house to hire Dr. Miles Arnett, a forensic document examiner, and Tessa Vance, a forensic accountant who used to work for the FBI. Tessa came to my house 2 days later. She did not drink tea or make small talk. She spread spreadsheets across my kitchen island. "I found something," Tessa said, pointing to a line item. "Everyone looks at the credit cards, but the real activity is in the personal loans. A loan for $50,000 was taken out in your name 3 weeks ago. Online lender. High interest. I never saw that money." I said. "No, you did not," Tessa replied. "Because 24 hours after it hit your account, it was transferred out to a vendor called Silver Wren Advisory LLC. I have never heard of them. Neither had I. So I pulled their articles of incorporation." Tessa slid a piece of paper across the granite counter. "It is a brand new consulting firm. Registered agent address is a co-working space downtown. And the managing member who signed the formation documents," I looked down at the paper. The signature was flamboyant, loopy, and unmistakably arrogant. It was Callie Hartman. My daughter-in-law had not just helped my son forge my name to declare me bankrupt. She had siphoned $50,000 of debt onto my record to fund her own shell company. They were gutting me like a fish. And they were using the bankruptcy court to wash away the evidence. The conference room at Klein and Dorsey Legal Group smelled of stale coffee and expensive cologne. It was designed to make you feel small. I sat on one side of the mahogany table, clutching my purse like a nervous bird. Across from me sat Grant Dorsey, flanked by my son and his wife. Callie had placed a binder on the table between us. It was thick, black, and looked official enough to end a life. "Ms. Whitaker, we need to be realistic," Dorsey said, leaning forward. He clasped his hands together on the polished wood. "The creditors are circling. If you do not cooperate with this filing, the bank will move to seize your home within 30 days. Chapter 7. is not a punishment. It is a lifeboat. I adjusted my glasses, making sure my hands trembled just enough to look frail. I do not understand. Mr. Dorsey. I pay my bills. Who are these creditors? Interest compounds. Mum, Ethan interrupted, his leg bouncing under the table. You lose track. It happens. But the paperwork, I said, looking at Dorsey with wide, watery eyes. Who filed it? I do not remember coming here. Dorsey smiled, a practiced expression that did not reach his eyes. As I said, we handled it remotely to save you the stress. We received the scanned documents directly from Callie's email. And he stopped. The air in the room froze for a fraction of a second. I mean, from your family, acting on your behalf. I caught it. He had received the files from Callie, not Ethan. My son was the face of this betrayal, but my daughter-in-law was the architect. Dorsey slid a document toward me. It was an affidavit confirming that I had authorized the electronic filing. He uncapped a heavy pen and placed it near my right hand. We just need you to sign this ratification, Dorsey said softly. It clears up the procedural lag. Once you sign this, the court stops all collection actions immediately. You will be safe. I looked at the pen. It was a trap. They knew the electronic signature on the original petition was a forgery. If I signed this document now, with wet ink in front of a witness, I would be retroactively validating their crime. I would be admitting the debt was real and the bankruptcy was my idea. I pushed the paper away. Just an inch. This is all so much, I murmured. I cannot focus without my reading lamp. I need to take this home and read it tonight. Ethan slammed his hand on the table. The sudden noise made me jump, this time for real. For God's sake. Mom, he shouted. His face was flushed red. Why do you have to be so difficult? We are trying to save you, and you are acting like you always do. You always have to control everything. Ethan, sweetheart, calm down. Callie soothed, though her eyes were hard as flint fixed on me. She is just confused. It is part of the decline. She turned to me, her voice dripping with poisonous honey. Lorraine, if you walk out that door without signing, we cannot protect you. I just need to sleep on it, I said, standing up. I walked out before they could stop me. My heart was hammering against my ribs, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of the hunt. When I got home, I made myself a sandwich and opened my laptop. I checked Callie's social media. She had posted 20 minutes ago. It was a black and white photo of my front porch, slightly blurred to look artistic and melancholic. The caption read, "The hardest part of love is watching the people who raised you lose their way. Exhausted from another day of legal battles trying to protect family assets. Please pray for us as we navigate this journey of caregiver burnout. Dementia awareness, family first." There were already 40 comments telling her she was a saint. She was building a public narrative of my incompetence so that when I fought back, I would look like a paranoid, senile old woman lashing out at her saviors. I closed the laptop and went upstairs to my bedroom closet. I needed to check my master file, the original deed to the house, and the paid-in-full letters for my husband's medical debt. These were the documents that proved I was solvent. I knelt and pulled up the carpet corner. The floor safe was there, but the dial was not set to 0, where I always left it. My stomach dropped. I spun the combination right to 24, left to 10, right to 5. The heavy door clicked open. The safe was not empty, but it was light. My passport was there, My grandmother's ruby ring was there. But the thick manila envelope, labeled Property and Liabilities 2020-2025, was gone. They had not just forged my name. Someone had entered my home, likely with the spare key I gave Ethan years ago, and stolen the only physical proof that could derail their bankruptcy petition. They were not just trying to win, they were trying to erase me. Tessa Vance sat at my dining room table, her laptop screen glowing in the dim afternoon light. She was peeling back the layers of Silver Wren Advisory LLC, the shell company that had received the proceeds of the fraudulent loan taken out in my name. "It is a classic nesting doll structure," Tessa said, tapping a key. "The registered agent is a paralegal in Nevada who probably does not even know this company exists. But look at the physical mailing address for the operating agreement." I leaned in. The address was a suite number at a building on 4th Street. "That is the Hive," I said. "It is a co-working space. Callie rents a hot desk there for her freelance marketing business." "Exactly," Tessa said. And when I cross-referenced the IP address used to access the Silver Wren bank account, it matches the IP address used to log into your son's home Wi-Fi. The picture was becoming clearer. Callie had created a fake company to siphon money from a loan she took out in my name. And now she was using the bankruptcy to wash the debt away before I noticed it. Then Denise called. She had been digging into court records from Arizona, where Callie lived before she met Ethan. "Lorraine." "You are not the first one," Denise said, her voice crackling over the speakerphone. "I found a sealed civil suit from 5 years ago. A landlord sued Callie for misrepresentation and fraud. She tried to sublet a property she did not own. It was settled out of court with a non-disclosure agreement, but the docket remains. She is a grifter," I whispered. "She is a survivor who does not care who she steps on." Denise corrected. "But why now? Why you?" Tessa answered that question an hour later. She had pulled Ethan's credit report. It was a sea of red ink. My son had taken out 3 hard money loans to buy fixer-upper houses in a neighboring county. He thought he could flip them. Instead, the market cooled. The contractors overcharged him, and he was underwater by $150,000. He had not told me. He likely had not told Callie until the collectors started calling. That was the leverage she needed. She had presented my assets as the only way to save his marriage and his reputation. "He is scared," I said, looking at the numbers that ruined my son's integrity. "He is not driving the car. He is just in the passenger seat with a gun to his head. That does not make him innocent." "Lorraine," Tessa said sharply. We kept digging. I needed to know why Grant Dorsey was involved. A lawyer of his tenure usually avoided obvious fraud. I searched property records for other bankruptcies Dorsey had handled in the last 2 years. A pattern emerged. In 12 cases, the foreclosed homes were sold at auction to the same LLC, managed by a man named Warren Pike. I searched my old email archives. Ethan had synced his phone to my laptop years ago, and sometimes, if the cloud settings were wrong, his deleted items would ghost onto my hard drive. I searched for Pike. I found a deleted email from Callie to Ethan, dated 2 months ago. Subject: the exit strategy. Grant says Pike can buy the house post-foreclosure. He will hold it. We move Mom into the in-law suite, charge her rent from her pension, and we take the master bedroom. She will have nowhere else to go. It is the only way to fix your mess. Ethan. I felt sick. They were not just kicking me out. They were planning to turn me into a tenant in my own home, funding their lifestyle with my pension while they lived in the house my husband and I built. I spent the next 3 days building my fortress. I went to the bank and got a notarized affidavit from the branch manager confirming I was not present for the address change. I downloaded the timestamps of the Silver Wren transfers. I printed the email. Then came the final nail. I met Dr. Miles Arnett in his office. He had my bankruptcy petition under a microscope, next to several control samples of my handwriting I had provided. "It is a tracing," Dr. Arnett said, looking up. "A very high-quality one. See the tremor in the ink line? That is not natural hesitation. That is the slow movement of a hand following a guide." "Can you prove where they got the guide?" I asked. He slid a transparency over the signature on the bankruptcy form. Then he slid another document underneath it. They lined up perfectly. Every loop, every cross, every dot. "It is an exact match to this document," he said. I looked at the underlying paper. It was my last will and testament, dated 4 years ago. I closed my eyes. I had given a sealed copy of my will to Ethan for safekeeping right after his father died. I told him to put it in his safe and never look at it unless I passed away. He had not just broken his promise. He had taken the document meant to protect him after my death and used it to destroy me while I was still alive. "Lorraine, Doctor," Arnett asked gently. "Are you all right?" "I am fine," I said, opening my eyes. The sadness was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. "Please write your report, Doctor. I have a court date to prepare for." I texted Ethan and told him to meet me at Shelley's diner at 7:30 in the morning. I specified that he was to come alone. If Callie showed up, I would leave immediately and go straight to the police station. He arrived 10 minutes late, looking pale and unshaven, wearing the same sweatshirt he had worn in college. He slid into the booth opposite me, unable to meet my eyes. I did not order breakfast. I simply reached into my bag and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a timeline. I had color-coded it. Blue for the unauthorized address change, red for the fraudulent loan, black for the bankruptcy filing. I slid it across the laminate table, right next to his coffee cup. "Read it," I said. Ethan stared at the paper. His eyes darted back and forth, widening as he processed the data. He saw the dates. He saw the IP addresses. He saw the transfer of $50,000 to Silver Wren Advisory. "Mum, I do not know what this is," he stammered, pushing the paper away as if it were hot. "You are imagining things. This is paranoid. I have the forensic report on the signature." "Ethan," I said, my voice low and steady, "and I have the email you received from Callie about buying my house and renting it back to me. Do not lie to me. Not here. Not today." He crumbled. It was instant. His shoulders slumped, and he put his head in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. But instead of remorse, I saw defensiveness. "I just wanted you to be safe," he hissed, keeping his voice down. "Callie said the creditors were going to come after you. She said they would swallow you whole because of Dad's medical bills. We were trying to protect the asset. If the house goes, you have nothing. We were going to save it for the family I asked, or for your bad investments." He flinched. "Ethan, look at me," I commanded. He slowly raised his eyes. "Do you remember who taught you to tell the truth? Do you remember who sat with you at this very table when you were 10 years old and made you return the comic book you stole from the drugstore, Mom? Please. Who taught you the difference between right and wrong?" "You did," he whispered. "You did. Then tell me exactly what you did." He took a shaky breath. I signed some papers. Grant sent them over. Callie said it was just procedural stuff to get the ball rolling. She said you were too stressed to handle the details and that we needed to act fast before the bank noticed your age. I did not read them all. Mom, I swear. I thought I was just signing as a witness or something. You signed my name, I said. And you used Dad's will to trace it. He went white. The realization that I knew about the will seemed to break him completely. I am giving you a choice, I said. And it is the only choice you are going to get. You withdraw this petition today. You go to the authorities with me and report the fraud regarding the loan and the identity theft. You turn on Grant Dorsey, and you turn on Callie. If you do that, I will ask for leniency for you. And if I do not, then I will let the system do its job, I said. And you know better than anyone that once I start a process, I finish it. He reached across the table and grabbed my hand. His palms were clammy. Mom, I cannot. You do not understand. Callie, she is pregnant. We just found out. If I get in legal trouble, if she gets in trouble, the baby, please, give me time to fix this my way. I pulled my hand back. I did not know if the pregnancy was real or if it was another script Callie had written for him. It was a powerful card to play, designed to target my specific weakness as a mother. You have 24 hours, I said. If the petition is not withdrawn by tomorrow at noon, I file my police report. Ethan left the diner without touching his coffee. I watched him go, feeling a terrible ache in my chest. I wanted to run after him and fix it, but I knew that fixing it was what got us here in the first place. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Callie. Ethan told me what you said. You are confused. Lorraine, if you try to destroy this family, I will have no choice but to show the court just how confused you really are. I have proof. It was a soft threat, the kind that sounds like concern to an outsider. I did not reply. Instead, I opened my email on my phone. I had synced my calendar with a shared family cloud years ago to track birthdays, and I realized I had never disconnected it from the group view. I scrolled through the upcoming week. There, scheduled for 2 days from now, was an appointment at a neurology clinic in the city. The patient name listed was Lorraine Whitaker. The reason for the visit was listed as cognitive capacity assessment. Callie had booked a competency test for me without my knowledge. She was going to drag me to a doctor, likely under false pretenses, and use any hesitation or anxiety I showed as clinical proof that I was unfit to manage my own affairs. She was not planning to retreat. She was planning to have me committed. I did not hire a lawyer who would hold my hand. I hired a lawyer who would hold a knife. Monica Raines operated out of a small, brick building 2 streets over from the courthouse. She wore suits that looked like armor and wasted 0 seconds on pleasantries. This is not a bankruptcy case anymore. Ms. Whitaker, Monica said, flipping through Dr. Arnett's forensic report. This is a crime scene. We are filing an emergency motion to stay the proceedings immediately. I am also filing an adversary proceeding to discharge the petition based on fraud and lack of authorization. Will that stop the sale of my house? I asked. It will freeze hell itself if I do it right. Monica replied without looking up. While Monica prepared the legal artillery, I watched my family disintegrate from a distance. Ethan had gone dark. My calls went straight to voicemail. My texts remained undelivered. I tried to log into the family cloud account to see if there were new photos. But the password had been changed. Callie had built a firewall around my son. cutting off his communications to ensure he could not defect. She did not know that I had already downloaded everything I needed 3 days ago. Tessa Vance arrived at my kitchen table the next morning with the final flow of funds. It was a roadmap of betrayal. "Here is the smoking gun," Tessa said, pointing to a highlighted column. "The $50,000 from the fraudulent loan hit your account on the 4th. On the 5th, it moved to Silver Wren Advisory. On the 6th, Silver Wren paid exactly $32,000 to a hard money lender to cover Ethan's overdue interest payments. The remaining $18,000. "Let me guess," I said. "Consulting fees," Tessa said dryly, "paid directly to Callie's personal checking account." My phone rang. It was Denise. She sounded out of breath, like she had been running. "Lorraine, I found someone." Denise said, "A former paralegal intern at Klein and Dorsey. She quit 6 months ago because she could not stomach the culture. She is willing to testify. She told me Grant Dorsey used to laugh about his clients in the break room. He called them ghosts because by the time they realized what was happening, they were already financially dead. The pieces were locking into place." I spent the afternoon reviewing the footage from my doorbell camera. I filtered the search for dates when I was at the grocery store. There it was. 2 weeks ago, Tuesday, 10 o'clock in the morning. Callie's car pulled into my driveway. She walked up to the door, used a key, and let herself in. She came out 12 minutes later carrying a tote bag that looked heavy. She did not look like a thief. She looked like a woman running an errand. That was the day my documents disappeared from the safe. The night before the hearing, I could not sleep. The house felt too big and too quiet. At 2 o'clock in the morning, my phone lit up on the nightstand. A voicemail from Ethan. I pressed play. His voice sounded thick, slurred, as if he had been drinking or crying, or both. "Mum." The silence stretched for 5 seconds. I do not know what I am doing anymore. She says we have to stick to the plan or we lose everything. But I miss you. I am so sorry." The message ended. He was cracking. He knew he was on the wrong side of history, but he was too weak to walk away. I forwarded the voicemail to Monica. 10 minutes later, she called me back. "That voicemail is good for character evidence, but what I just found is better," Monica said. Her voice was electric. "I have been digging into Grant Dorsey's history. He has 2 prior reprimands from the Bar Association for conflicts of interest. But that is not the headline." "What is the headline?" I asked. "The investor," Monica said. "Warren Pike. The man who buys the houses from Dorsey's bankrupt clients. I ran a genealogy trace on him. He is not just a random investor." I gripped the phone tighter. "Warren Pike is Callie's second cousin," Monica said. "They grew up in the same town in Arizona. This is not just opportunism. Lorraine, this is a conspiracy. They have been running this play for years, and you were just the next target on the list." I looked out the window at the dark street. The fear was gone. All that was left was the cold certainty of what I had to do. They had brought a script to a courtroom, thinking they were directing the play. They had no idea I had already rewritten the ending. The hearing took place in courtroom 302 of the Federal Building. It was a windowless box of light wood and fluorescent hum, designed to strip away emotion and leave only the cold arithmetic of debt. The room was fuller than I expected. Grant Dorsey sat at the petitioner's table, his suit pressed to a razor's edge, radiating the confidence of a man who had played this game 1,000 times. Behind him sat my family. Ethan, looked like a ghost in a cheap tie, staring at his hands. Callie sat beside him, upright and poised, a notebook open on her lap, as if she were attending a parent-teacher conference. I did not sit with them. I sat at the respondents' table with Monica Raines. I wore my navy blue suit, the one I used to wear for board presentations at Harbour Crest. I did not look like a confused grandmother losing her grip on reality. I looked like a risk manager who had come to audit the books. Dorsey began his opening statement with a tone of practiced sympathy. Your Honour, we are here to facilitate a necessary transition for Ms. Whittaker, Dorsey said, gesturing vaguely in my direction without looking at me. It is unfortunate, but clear. Due to mounting medical debts and shall we say, reduced capacity to manage complex financial instruments, Ms. Whittaker has become overwhelmed. This Chapter 7 filing is a mercy. It allows her to liquidate assets that have become a burden and start fresh under the care of her supportive family. He painted a picture of a woman drowning in senility. I sat perfectly still. I did not scoff. I did not roll my eyes. I simply wrote a note on my legal pad. He is overplaying the capacity argument. Then came Callie's move. She leaned forward and whispered to Dorsey, sliding a piece of paper into his hand. Dorsey nodded solemnly and addressed the bench. To support this, Your Honour, the family has provided a note from a medical professional documenting Ms. Whittaker's recent history of stress-induced memory lapses and confusion. It was the evidence she had manufactured. It was likely just a general observation from a walk-in clinic or a telehealth consult. Vague enough to be legal, but damaging enough to sow doubt. Judge Hollis Bain, a woman with steel-grey hair and eyes that missed nothing, took the paper. She read it over the top of her glasses. This is not a sworn affidavit. Mr. Dorsey, Judge Bain said. It is a printout. It speaks to the context. Your Honour, Dorsey replied smoothly. Monica Raines stood up. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Your Honour, the only context that matters today is who actually signed the petition. Monica said. We are not here to discuss my client's health. We are here to discuss a felony. I am submitting into evidence a forensic report from Dr. Miles Arnett, a court-certified document examiner. It concludes with 100% certainty that the signature on the bankruptcy petition is a forgery. The air in the room vanished. Dorsey stiffened. Ethan's head snapped up. Monica continued. Furthermore, the report identifies the source of the forgery. The signature was traced from a last will and testament dated 4 years ago, a document that was in the sole possession of the debtor's son, Ethan Whittaker. Judge Bain set Callie's note down. She picked up the forensic report. The silence in the room stretched for 10 seconds, heavy and suffocating. Mr. Dorsey, Judge Bain said. Her voice was quiet. This is a serious allegation. It is a tactic. Your Honour, Dorsey blustered, though his neck was turning red. Ms. Whittaker is in denial. She authorised this filing. We have the electronic logs. Judge Bain lowered the file. She looked directly at the lawyer. I am not asking about logs. Mr. Dorsey, I am asking about your due diligence. Did you witness Lorraine Whittaker sign this petition? Dorsey shifted his weight. Well, as is common practice in expedited family filings, we received the executed documents via secure scan from the family liaison to spare Miss Whittaker the travel. You received a scan, Judge Bain repeated. You did not video conference. You did not verify identity in person. We relied on the son's power of attorney, which, the power of attorney. My client also claims is forged, Judge Bain interrupted. We acted in good faith based on the family's representations, Dorsey's voice pitched up, just a fraction. Judge Bain leaned back. So you are telling me that you filed to liquidate a woman's entire life estate without ever speaking to her directly, to confirm she knew she was becoming homeless? It was a simple procedural question, but it carried the weight of a guillotine. In the gallery, Ethan started to stand up. His face was twisted in panic, his mouth opening as if to confess, to stop the train before it went off the cliff. Ethan started. I never meant. Suddenly, Callie's hand shot out. She grabbed Ethan's wrist under the table. It was not a comforting touch. It was a vice grip. She yanked him back down into his chair with such force that his shoulder jerked. She whispered something into his ear, her face a mask of terrifying calm, but her knuckles were white. The entire courtroom saw it. Judge Bain saw it. Sit down, Mr. Whitaker, Judge Bain said, her eyes narrowing as she looked from the trembling son to the woman holding his leash. We are not done yet. Judge Bain did not raise her voice, but her silence was loud enough to crack the foundation of the room. She turned to Grant Dorsey. Mr. Dorsey, she said, if you did not meet your client in person, surely you have phone logs, notes from a Zoom consultation, a verified email chain directly from Ms. Whitaker's personal account, confirming she understood the ramifications of Chapter 7. Dorsey shuffled his papers. For the first time, his smooth movements looked jerky. Your Honor, as I stated, the family handled the logistics. My notes reflect detailed conversations with Mr. Whitaker and Ms. Hartman, acting as intermediaries. Intermediaries, Judge Bain repeated. You filed a petition to bankrupt a solvent woman based on hearsay from her beneficiaries. Monica Raines stood up. She did not look at Dorsey. She looked at the screen mounted on the wall. Your Honor, I would like to submit Exhibit C, Monica said. This is a compilation of doorbell camera footage and call logs. It shows that while Ms. Whitaker was grocery shopping, Ms. Hartman entered her home using a key she was never given. It also shows that every single email sent to Mr. Dorsey's firm originated from an IP address registered to a co-working space where Ms. Hartman rents a desk. On the screen, Callie's image flickered. She was walking out of my house with my tote bag. The courtroom shifted. The air grew heavy. Then Tessa Vance took the stand. She laid out the financial autopsy of my son's life. The petitioners claim financial distress, Tessa stated, her voice dry and clinical. But the distress belongs entirely to Ethan Whitaker. He is currently carrying $150,000 in high-interest debt. The bankruptcy of Lorraine Whitaker would trigger a foreclosure sale, removing the equity protection on her home. Monica then called the former intern. She was young, barely 22, and shaking as she took the oath. But her voice was clear. Mr. Dorsey called them ghosts, she said, gripping the railing. He told the junior associates that elderly clients were the best kind of billable hours because they were like ghosts in their own lives. He said by the time they realized they had signed away their rights, the house was already sold. Grant Dorsey stood up, his face purple. Objection. This is hearsay and disgruntled employee slander. Overruled, Judge Bain snapped. Beside him, Callie stood up, the mask of the professional daughter-in-law shattered. Tears began to stream down her face, but they looked angry rather than sad. "This is unfair," Callie cried out, her voice trembling with manufactured hysteria. "We were drowning. We just wanted to save the family asset. We had a plan to buy the house back immediately after the court approved the sale. We were going to keep it in the family." The room went dead silent. Judge Bain lowered her glasses. "You intended to buy the house back?" Callie froze. She realized too late that she had just confessed to bankruptcy fraud. She had admitted the goal was not to pay creditors, but to wash the title and transfer the asset. Ethan looked at his wife. Then he looked at me. I sat still. My hands folded. I offered him no lifeline. "Ethan," I said softly. Though the room was so quiet, everyone heard it. My son stood up. He looked like a man waking up from a long, bad dream. He pushed Callie's hand off his arm. "I signed them," Ethan whispered. "Speak up." "Mr. Whitaker," Judge Bain commanded. "I signed them," Ethan shouted, his voice breaking. "I signed the petition. I signed the power of attorney. Mom never saw any of it. Callie told me it was the only way to fix the debt. She said Mom would not understand." He turned to me, tears spilling onto his cheap tie. "I never saw you sign anything. Mom, I am sorry." Judge Bain turned her gaze back to Grant Dorsey. It was a look that could strip paint. "Mr. Dorsey," she said, "if the debtor did not sign, and the son admits to forgery, who gave you the legal authority to stand in my courtroom today?" Dorsey opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked at Warren Pike's empty seat in the back row, then back at the judge. I was under the impression that save it." Monica interrupted. "Your Honor, one last document." She handed a single sheet of paper to the bailiff. "This is an internal email retrieved from Mr. Dorsey's server during discovery for a separate malpractice suit." Monica said, "It is dated 3 months ago, from Grant Dorsey to Warren Pike." She read it aloud. "Wait until the winter. The mother has a scheduled medical checkup then. We can file the petition the same week to create a paper trail of health issues. The house will be yours by spring. It was not negligence. It was a hunting party. And they had been tracking me for seasons." Judge Bain did not let the silence linger. She looked at Grant Dorsey with the precision of a surgeon locating a tumor. "Mr. Dorsey," she said, her voice echoing off the wood paneling. "I have one final question. Are you currently representing directly or indirectly any party with an intent to purchase Ms. Whitaker's assets post-bankruptcy?" Dorsey blinked. It was a reflex, a micro-expression of panic that he covered instantly with a scoff. "Absolutely not, Your Honor. That would be a conflict of interest." Monica Raines did not even stand up this time. She simply slid a document across the table to the bailiff. "Your Honor," Monica said, "I present Exhibit D. It is a legal consulting agreement between the Klein and Dorsey Legal Group and Mr. Warren Pike. It is dated 4 days prior to the filing of this petition. The scope of work is listed as Asset Acquisition Strategy for Distressed Real Estate." Dorsey's face turned the color of ash. He started to stammer, but Judge Bain raised a hand. "Enough," she said. "This court finds that the petition filed under the name of Lorraine Whitaker was unauthorized and fraudulent. The case is dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I am referring this entire file, including the transcripts of today's hearing, to the United States Attorney's Office for an immediate investigation into bankruptcy fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit elder financial exploitation." Callie stood up abruptly. She grabbed Ethan's arm. her nails digging into his suit jacket. "We are leaving." "Come on." "Ethan?" "Sit down." "Ma'am?" A court security officer boomed, stepping into the aisle to block their path. "The court has ordered preliminary statements to be taken." Ethan collapsed back into his chair. He looked at me across the aisle. His face was wet with tears, his expression a ruin of regret and fear. "Mum," he choked out, I am so sorry." I looked at him. I remembered the little boy who used to bring me dandelions. I remembered the teenager I taught to drive. And then I looked at the man who had signed my name to a document that would have left me homeless. "Ethan," I said, my voice quiet and cold. "Are you sorry because you hurt me? Or are you sorry because you got caught?" He flinched as if I had struck him. I turned to the bailiff and handed over the thick binder I had been guarding. It contained everything: the timeline, the forensic report on the signature, the flow of funds to Callie's shell company, the doorbell footage, the threatening texts. Judge Bain looked down at Grant Dorsey. He was stuffing papers into his briefcase, trying to disappear. "Mr. Dorsey," she said, "I am also filing a formal complaint with the State Bar Association regarding your conduct today. You should expect a suspension of your license pending the investigation. Do not leave the building." Dorsey froze. His career ended in that silence. I stood up to leave. As I walked past the table where my son and his wife sat under the watchful eye of the guard, I stopped. I needed them to know one last thing. I needed them to understand that their plan was flawed from the very first second. "You know," I said, looking at Callie, who refused to meet my eyes, "you never could have sold the house, even if the bankruptcy had gone through." Ethan looked up, confused. "What I worked in risk management for 30 years, I said. "I saw families destroy each other for money every single day. 6 months ago, when you started asking about my finances, I transferred the deed of my house into an irrevocable trust. I am the beneficiary, but I do not own it on paper. No creditor can touch it, and certainly no forged signature can sell it." Ethan stared at me. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He realized then that all of this, the lies, the crime, the betrayal, had been for nothing. I had been 2 steps ahead of them before they even bought the legal pad. I walked out of the courtroom and into the bright, harsh sunlight of the city. I did not smile. I did not feel triumph. I just felt the heavy, quiet relief of a burden set down. I had my home. I had my dignity. But as I walked toward my car, I knew I had lost something that no court could ever restore. I had lost the ability to look at my son without seeing a stranger. That was the price of the truth, and I had paid it in full. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. It is a hard one to tell, but I think it is important to share these realities. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please drop your city or state in the comments below. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this narration and want to hear more real-life dramas, please make sure to subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, hit that like button, and smash the hype button to help this video get discovered by more people who might need to hear it. Stay safe out there, everyone.